So I want you to imagine with me that Jesus is here right now in this room, and I know, but he's going to be whispering specifically these words. And I want you just to imagine that he's kind of whispering these words to you. I want to say something about what Christians call incarnation. Yes, indeed, I do have a special connection with you humans. But that special connection did not begin 2,000 years ago with my earthly indwelling in the Christian Jesus. Oh no, I've been around for longer than that. Sorry to disappoint those among you for whom the Christian Jesus is all important. But I can't let you get away with that crude limitation. I've been around much longer than your minds can comprehend. I have watched with keen interest your coming into being over several millennia. And I was there in total solidarity when you first evolved as a human species about 6 million years ago. By the way, please don't try to pin me to exact times and places because I don't work according to chronological time. Now, humans, can you help me work out a dilemma? Since I was there fully endorsing, affirming, and blessing your experience 6 million years ago, why do you restrict my incarnational activity and creativity to the past 2,000 years? Christians support the idea that my incarnation is confined solely to the one that you call Jesus of Nazareth. I was with you I was always with you from the very start. While you were climbing trees in Africa, having fun, I was with you. Before you took everything so damn serious, I was with you. By the way, redemption was fully yours from the very beginning. Why did you betray your African origins? Why did you invent so much racism against your black brothers and sisters? You know, we were all black once, even me. And it pains me deeply that you have done and continue to do this terrible thing to Africa. So let me make myself clear. I want to break out of this stranglehold in which you have imprisoned me for the last 2,000 years. Every time I hear that 2,000-year thing, I feel like screaming. It makes me feel so small and fabricated. I belong to a matrix of billions of years of cosmic expansionness. My incarnation identity belongs to that context and not to the small bottleneck into which you humans have squeezed me. I have come to set you free. Please allow me to be free also. I want to repeat part of this. So let me make myself clear. I want to break out of the stranglehold in which you have imprisoned me these last 2,000 years. Every time I hear that 2,000-year thing, I feel like screaming. It makes me feel so small and fabricated. I belong to a matrix of billions of years of cosmic expansiveness. My incarnation identity belongs to that context, and not to the small bottleneck into which you humans have squeezed me. I have come to set you free. Please allow me to be free also. I took that from this really amazing book called Catching Up with Jesus. And I would love to pronounce his name, but I can't. Omerchu is his last name, I think. What if Jesus came not as a beginning for humanity, but as an ending? What if Jesus came as a revelation of God to celebrate and affirm all that had been achieved to that point? Now, just because we didn't get it, just because we're not doing all that, doesn't mean that that isn't true, that it wasn't possible at that point of his coming, because obviously it was, because he did, that it wasn't possible for all of us. And so it was a celebration of, you came into this 6 billion year evolutionary cycle, and you've been growing, and you've been becoming more consciously aware, and you're becoming the human beings that you can be. Let's celebrate. I'm going to come show you who you really are. Rather than, I'm going to come show you who you can really become if you work really hard, but who you already are. What if it was the cosmos's way of just saying and celebrating and affirming, oh my God, look at who you are. When I was 4 or 5 years old, and I've told some of these stories before, I was definitely being told about a God and a Jesus that I knew wasn't true. I don't know how I knew that. I didn't have any adults to trust in the first place, so maybe when they told me about God and Jesus, I didn't trust them about that either. I don't know how come, I just knew that. But because I knew that, I just continued to discount everything everybody said about Jesus forever. Because I knew it was some kind of a distortion of a truth, but not the truth. And I did lots of Jesus things. I mean, I was baptized. I continued to go to church till I was about 11. I did lots of things. I tried really hard to take that Jesus I heard about and have that Jesus fit into my life, because so many people were doing that. And I just was like, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. When I was baptized, I was told that now Jesus would really come into my life and make everything all better. Did anybody else get told that? It didn't happen for me. I continued to pray. I continued to look for that Jesus that would make my life all better. And you have to remember, I came from a small town, so all I knew that even existed on this planet was Christianity until I was probably in my teens. I just knew that. I didn't know anything else. I didn't know there was anything else. If you would have said Hinduism to me, I would have said, huh? What's that? And I would have had no idea. I eventually found the New Thought Jesus and metaphysics, and that seemed to begin to start answering a lot of stuff for me. Oh, this is about consciousness. This isn't about the true story. This way I can metaphysically interpret all of this. But as time has gone on, I have been compelled to continue to look for the real Jesus. I didn't begin to find that Jesus until I did leave this country. Until I went to another country where another religion, not Christianity, from day one has thought he was magnificent. Not based on our Christian story, based on their own knowing and working with him in their own culture and way of life. So they're merging with his consciousness, which is what the Hindus do. Is they understand teachers and masters and gurus as having a higher consciousness that they're sort of working to attain themselves or match to or become one with. Because basically they don't care anything about his story. They see him as that consciousness in human form that has come to the planet, along with a whole list of other people, not just him. When I read Autobiography of a Yogi by Parmahansa Yogananda, and I listened to him talk about Jesus, I really had my eyes open. I was so stunned to think that this Indian yogi was going to spend half of this book talking about Jesus. And here it was. And this is one of the things he says. He says, the saviors of the world did not come to foster division, and their teaching should not be used to that end. It is something of a misnomer even to refer to the New Testament as the Christian Bible, because it does not belong exclusively to any one sect. Truth is meant for blessing and upliftment of the entire human race, and the Christ consciousness is universal. So does Jesus Christ belong to everyone. He goes on to say that everything that Jesus taught was taught by Krishna exactly the same way. That he also goes on to say that, of course, Jesus went to India when he was young and met with the gurus of the time in India and sort of exchanged knowings with them and them with him. And that I first resisted this. When I first went to India, I resisted the idea of these gurus. And I remember staying in an ashram with one, and I didn't wear my necklace today, but the one who gave me my necklace. And I came home and I still had resistance, and I was reading something about his life one day, and it was just similar to Jesus' story. You know, he emerged out of a lotus blossom, and there he was, and he knew all the things that, you know, as he was still a baby. And I thought, why not? No more ridiculous than the story that we have, just a different story. So why not? And I started to open up my eyes to, why not? Why not all of it? Why can't we just take all of it? Why don't I just take all of it? And I really began to rethink this idea that why couldn't just all these gurus be assigned divinity? We assign divinity to Jesus, they assign divinity to this person, because obviously some consciousness that they displayed was more than and higher than the one that they currently were aware of in themselves. I started to think, what business is it of mine to make that determination at all? What God do I think I have control of that I get to say who he sent where to do what when? And how incredibly small of me to not accept all of it. And how incredibly small I would make God to think that, or consciousness, divine consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And I'm only saying God is because it's the word we all pretty much understand the meaning of. But who am I to say what that consciousness is capable of, would do, would not do, would, you know, I mean, it's not up to me. It is totally not up to me. What is up to me is to find the teacher of my choice that I resonate with and follow that teacher. When I was in India the second time, and I spent 21 days in the silence, before I left, just before I left, Mataji from the ashram in Bombay said to me, "Who is your teacher?" And I just looked at her, like, I don't know, I didn't have an answer. She asked me again, and I just sat there. I didn't have an answer for her. But I knew it was a question I needed to ask myself. And when I went to India, in the silence for 21 days, I asked myself over and over and over again, who is my teacher? And over and over again, Jesus was the answer. And over again, I resisted that answer. Because although I had had many mystical experiences with Jesus personally, I couldn't stand Jesus out loud. I couldn't stand the Jesus out loud that everybody talks about. The one that's been painted the picture of in this Western culture. I just couldn't tolerate that one. And so for me to go around saying that Jesus was my teacher was just more than I was willing to do publicly. But the truth is, Jesus and I wouldn't leave each other alone. I couldn't stop rebelling at the Jesus of Christianity, and he kept talking to me about how perfect he was for me. How I was a lot like him. And how I didn't have to stop rebelling against that Jesus story, because he did too. And in the last few years, if you've been here, you'll know that I've barely said a word about Jesus. And I barely said a word about Jesus because it's been uncomfortable for me because of who I imagine you think I'm talking about. I think there's been an elephant in the room, either created by me, certainly maintained by me, or maybe not. But I think so. Because I think there is more than just me that is uncomfortable a bit at the mention of, oh, we're going to talk about Jesus. And this thing in me goes, oh no, we're not. Because, first of all, I don't think you could talk about the one I know. I don't, because I never hear about that one out in the world. But I get that if that Jesus, that's the universal master in other places, devoid of a Christian culture, because I believe this, no one has ever walked this planet that came to show us how to live in the Aquarian age like he did. And this idea of catching up to him is really more accurate to me. But we can't catch up to a fabricated story. We can't catch up to what we, in a patriarchal society and in a patriarchal age and in a Western culture, have turned him into. Because first of all, who would want to catch up with that? So how was I going to set myself free? I was going to set myself free by doing this series and by saying to you that when I talk about Jesus, you will clearly know who I am talking about. Because I'm not willing to miss out on this incredible example that it's 2011 that we have who walked this planet and said, oh, by the way, it's about community. Oh, by the way, it's about loving each other. Oh, by the way, it's not about judgment or even what you believe or who gives a crap what you do. It's about love. And if we're going to have the Aquarian age, and we're supposed to usher it in, please, who are we following? Who are we using as an example? Who better to really talk to us about the struggles that we have within us if we allow that talking to come from not the story, but the man.
Yes.
We have spent a long time seeking divine power. And when you took Jesus and we usurped him to find our divine power, rather than to find divine humanity. We have tried to skip over that humanity thing, go straight to divine power. Denying the fact that everything he showed us was about being human. The very best, beautiful human. He didn't do ceremonies and woo-woo things to transcend you out of the body and into some other place where it's all happy and good. He didn't do that. He walked among the suffering on this planet with love. Now, all that other stuff, I don't know, maybe he did a little of it. I never got any vibe from him that he did that. But I really got the vibe from him that he said, you know, this is it. This is the way to behave. If this consciousness will ever sort of be willing to live in you, it has to come from this kind of place of forgiveness and love. So, I really want to call Jesus my guru. And I really don't want to be caught in Christianity doing it. And there. This divine consciousness journey we've been on has been at least 6 billion years. God didn't wake up one day 2,000 years ago, wow, they have screwed this up. It has been a journey of awakening from moment one. Fully, always there. But what's really amazing about it is that 2,000 years ago, we had acquired enough consciousness to take him and hold him and his story hostage and use it against the world. To hold hostage everybody that we could get to listen. That's the place of consciousness we evolved to eventually. And that's what we did in that place of consciousness. We're evolving past that. It is absolutely time to set this story free. All along the way, there were masters waking people up. All along the way. Those people were so humbled at the idea of the presence of a master, they didn't think to hold him hostage. But we eventually evolved to where we allowed our shadow to create Jesus for us. And call it divine. And call it the thing I will follow. So, how did we do that? Well, really, only the Western world did it. Starting with the Romans and the Greeks. We have attempted to make him rational, dogmatic, instead of free and loving like he was. We have attempted to make his story about A, B, and C. This is the way. Because we had to make him rational and logic, because how do you contain love? But rules? Now there's another story. So rational and logic was our projection onto him. And then we gave him absolute power. We made him God. And we gave him absolute power, and we domesticated him as the judge and jury of our lives. And every time someone was made an attempt to take him back from that role of judge and jury and that role of domestication, literally an entire culture becomes afraid and uncertain. And it is turned into an attack on the patriarch, on men, on male energy, rather than a freeing of a teaching. Because we took him, we made him in our image. When they try to take him back, we take it personal. Instead of love, we have allowed his primary message to be the catalyst for bigotry and war and racism. And I catch myself often thinking how somebody so amazing can feel so incredibly bad to me. How can something so beautiful, the mention of, feel so crappy in my life? And I think that this Prince of Peace, this servant of men, has been turned into this dogmatic keeper of the rules, made judge and jury at the hand of his followers. Historically, over time, we made Jesus a white male Westerner. He was never that. He was probably short and dark hair and dark eyes and dark skin. And you ever see these pictures of him where he's just this beautiful, I mean, sort of Kevin Costner looking guy? We turned him into us. Our dark side turned him into us. And if we study him on our own, we will see that the powers and the rules and the dominance is not what he ever said or came here to teach. Skin color, sexual orientation, wealth and education, sin, all that stuff made no difference to him at all. But to make him into our image, we had to make him care about those things. And when we see him, we instead see our failure instead of God. And over time, we forgot we did it. And if we don't look really closely, we will not discover what our conflict is. We will not discover why we want to deny the greatest person who ever walked the planet. But we hate ourselves so much. we turn him into what we hate in some way. A judge and a jury and a ruler. He never founded the Christian church. Other people did. He never had a dogma or a ceremony. We made them sacred. He is now the sacred keeper of buildings and wine and bread and candles and altars, and he didn't do any of that. When I was a hospital chaplain, I had to do a Sunday service in the hospital. It was a Catholic hospital, and I had to offer communion. And after the service, I threw the wafers away in the garbage can in the rectory. When I came on Monday morning, I was in deep shit. Because those wafers were dug out of the garbage can, and I was told that they were sacred and that I should never do that again. And I remember thinking to myself, isn't everything sacred? We can make anything we want sacred, but I just draw the line in blaming it on Jesus and God. Jesus turned his back on the religions of the day. Why would we think he would want one created in his name? The disciples wanted to make him a king, and they wanted him to reign from a throne. And they were deeply disappointed because he didn't want to do that either. Because he didn't see himself as separate. He didn't see himself as better than other people. We did that too. He walked among everyone. We in the West have taken on a philosophy of individualism, which separates me from you and you from you and everybody from everybody, because I am personally responsible and I create my own world and I blah, 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 blah. What that separateness has caused is our planet is dying. He didn't teach separateness. He taught community. He taught about how we get this done together, how we make it through life together, how we love and treat and hold each other's hands, how we become part of this web of life. Remember the love your neighbor part? I mean, my God, what does that mean to us? Nothing, almost nothing, if not completely nothing. And Jesus' relationship with God has eternally been talked about a child. So we have all become children, helpless, constantly needing guidance and seeking something, relying on interpretations of this and that. And Jesus was made the subservient child of a father, not a mother, but an all-powerful father, because it was a patriarchal society he lived in, and we are still living in one today. When we can't grow up as spiritual beings, we can't ever find our way. We can't ever co-create a world that we want to see, because we are still just helpless children who must always just follow the rules and never make waves. And I think it's time to grow up. Jesus shook up the religious leaders of his day with his radical teachings. He was really regarded as a pest, someone they needed to get rid of. And the story of his life and his death has been so beautifully written and so respectably told that really we believe he was this middle-class angel floating around the planet, blessing everyone, healing, and making things beautiful. Not at all. Not at all. But what has happened because of that picture, all good Christians should be that too. Follow the rules. Don't question authority. Don't rock the boat. We're expected to be kind and charitable, but not too kind and too charitable. Don't talk about too many justices, because then all of a sudden you've fallen out of Jesus' realm. The man who wrote this beautiful book puts it this way: we've come a long way from the fiery prophetic figure of Nazareth who shocked and disturbed the convention of his day in the name of justice and liberation. Our respectability has taken a terrible toll on the authentic calling of Christian life. We have lost sight of the deeper vision and lost heart for the passion and enthusiasm of God's new reign. Following Jesus is not a respectable journey. It is a call to truth and justice and liberation of the oppressed, the disempowered, and the excluded. The followers of Jesus are called to be different and should be recognized for being different. When we give in to social and cultural norms, we have lost our ability to be the light of the world. That's very powerful. When we do it like everybody else is doing it, we have lost our ability to be the light of the world. Because when we look out there and we look at everybody else, do we feel like we're looking at the light of the world? And then when we're following them, do we not get that we can't be either? He goes on to say, when we travel down the road Jesus did, perhaps the painful martyrdom will not be in the shedding of our blood, but in the misunderstanding, ridicule, and rejection we have experienced at the hand of our family, church, country, friends, and loved ones. There is a Jesus in the world that is very different from the one most of us have known. One who is free from the image imposed on him by the Western world over the past 2,000 years. There is a Jesus in the world that is free from the necessity to have actually lived the story we tell about him. In fact, he's free enough to maybe not live that story at all. And it doesn't make any difference. There is a Jesus that lives in me and that grows and that changes with me, and that tells me the truth about what he did and what he said and what he did not do and what he did not say. I invite you to join me in setting him free from the power of our hungry ego, our fear of each other, our need to be right, and our inability to love ourselves, because that's not what he came to teach us. I invite you in the next few weeks to go on this journey with me, to discover who we might have discovered had we not had the story, what we might see alive in the world if we weren't too afraid to keep looking in that direction, and who we might obviously get is truly the leader of the Aquarian Age, 2012. All that's in front of us. We can miss it. We can miss it.